Welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead on this next section and add in the bill of materials. Before I do that, I want to come back here. I'm going to click on Window and bring up my guide rod assembly file again. And what I'd like to highlight is if I go to my feature manager, right here, here's everything that's in the history of my project. What I want to highlight is that the bill of materials that I create will create it in the order that my items appear in this assembly feature tree. And by the way, if I were to create that bill of materials, decide I wanted a different order of parts on that bill of materials, I could come back into this area and reorder these set of parts, and my history tree or my bill of materials would update inside of the drawing. So this is the order that I'd like them to show. So just to demonstrate that concept, I'm going to reorder these parts by moving the pneumatic cylinder up to a place where I don't want it to be. And I'll go back to the assembly drawing and we'll undertake the task of creating a bill of materials. So Window, Sheet 1, which is my drawing file. I'm back here. And now I am in my annotation tab, and notice the tabs here are different than they were back in the assembly file. I have relevant tabs to a drawing. I have drawing, annotation, sketch, markup, evaluate, and probably the only things that we're going to be using will be the annotation and the sketch tab. Okay, so let's put that bill of materials in. In the annotation tab, the far right icon is a tables tab, and I hit the alternate arrow, and by the way, there are a number of automated tabs that are available here in SolidWorks. In this project, we're going to deal with the bill of materials and the revision table. In this chapter, we're going to deal with the bill of materials, so let's do that. I'm going to click bill of materials, and SolidWorks is expecting me to select a drawing view to specify the model for creating a bill of materials. I want to highlight here that in this drawing, I show an exploded view of my guide assembly and a collapsed view of my guided assembly. If, for instance, I thought there was a need to show for maybe this bolt all by itself off to the side somewhere, I could open the bolt file and put a view of the bolt over here. Then I would have views that contain different properties and the bill of materials would be different. SolidWorks expects that as an option, and so it wants me to tell the software which view I want to tie my bill of materials to. And I'm going to select the main view here. As soon as I click that, I have a whole set of properties that I'm going to need to deal with. So to start with, I'm going to leave this top level only checked. I'm going to need to come back and adjust. I want to come back and adjust that to show you the differences. And let's see, is that it? I think so. So I want to highlight down here that my bill of materials are going to start at item number 1, and I want to leave that alone. And I think I'm good to go. I'll click OK. And I now have a bill of materials attached to my cursor. I'm going to drag that to the top left, right? SolidWorks definitely likes to snap it into that corner, which is great, and click it into place, and I now have a table. So I also want to highlight that I can select a row, or I can select a column, or I can select a cell. And all of these selections behave in a manner very similar to Microsoft Excel. So if we look at the order of items, right, I have this pneumatic cylinder up as item 2. I prefer for it not to be item number 2. I'd prefer it to be down at the end. So let's make that adjustment. So I click out. I'm going to go back to my guide rod assembly file, drag pneumatic cylinder down to the bottom. It's now in the bottom. I'm going to save this file and go back to the drawing and look and see what the results are. So back to sheet 1. Everything updates. I click rebuild, and pneumatic cylinder is still on item 2. And if I take a look here, I can see that the pneumatic cylinder is still on item 2. Kind of concerning to me, but if I come up and click on my table, and let's see what happens if I click the green check mark here. Still didn't update. So, right, I'm going to go back here and click, and I'm going to change the style of bill of materials. So I'm going to click indented. Yeah, actually, and now the pneumatic cylinder has moved down to item 8. And by the way, then there are 2 sub-items here for my pneumatic cylinder, the tube part and the plate part. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up to you. You are probably going to need to choose either indented or parts only, and it depends on whether or not you see a bill of materials like this, or whether you only see a couple items, like one item for all of this assembly and then one item for this back here. All right, so I'm going to click the green check mark, and notice that my bill of materials is coming down right over the flange bolt, and so I don't have enough space on this drawing. So what I'm going to do is make some adjustments here. So I'm going to take these, say, last, or I guess go row by row. So I'm going to click this row and right click. And under formatting, I'm going to see if I can specify a row height. And I'm going to specify, how about 0.3? And it's not going to let me do it. Let's try that one more time. Did I not? 0.3. Huh. So I guess it's going to force me to fit all of my text in here. So I guess step 1 is I'm going to expand this part number area. By the way, I will see my adjustment icon, and I will kind of collapse description a little bit to make it a little shorter. And I believe that I now can make these rows a little smaller. So let's try row height again. And how about 0.4? See if SolidWorks will allow me to make it that short. Yep. And so I'm going to make the next ones 0.4 as well. Row height 0.4. Row height 0.4. Row height 0.4. All right, so now I have space in there. So in theory, right, I may not have been able to make enough space. And quite frankly, if there's not enough room here on the face of a drawing for all the information I need, well, my option is pretty simple, and that's just use a larger sheet of paper. I want to highlight that I would not have to start over. I could come back up to sheet format, right click, and get my properties. And under properties, I could simply choose a different size sheet. If I were then to click apply changes, what would happen is my sheet would get larger, and I would be able to readjust where my views and my bill of material are. Okay, so notice that this second column, column B, says part number, but yet I have a bunch of file names. I'm going to change that by double-clicking into the cell and simply change that to description. And double click into the next column and change this title to part number. And now my table makes sense. I want to highlight that these words under what was originally called part number are the names of files that I chose. So if I wanted this to automatically populate and be correct, my file names would be numbers. And then my descriptions could make sense. So I want to highlight here that now if I want to add a part number, and I do, right? I have a blank box. My guess is all of your boxes are blank. I'm going to double click into this blank box. I'm going to accept that I want to break a link. By the way, I'm going to say don't show it to me again. Click yes, and I can enter text. And I think I'll use 203, how about 008? I think that's the next number that's available to me. And then I'm done. And notice that under pneumatic cylinder, I have item 8 and no item numbers under the sub 2 parts. That's this indented idea. Only the assembly gets an item number and the 2 parts under that don't. Okay, so I'm done adding a bill of materials. I'll close this section. In the next section, we're going to add the revision table. Hope this is helpful, and we'll see you in the next chapter.